This episode of the Adam Messer Show is brought to you by Valhalla Books. Valhalla Books, the Devil's Due anthology, where nothing is ever as it seems, is due to release on Halloween 2020. For more information, you can check out Valhalla Books at valhallabooks.com. And welcome back to the second hour of the Adam Messer Show. Sebastian, you mind playing a little bit more for us? Alright, this is Sebastian Messer, everybody, playing some live music. Wow, that was good. What was that? It was just you playing? Really? Give me a little noodle. Nice. I like that. Thanks, Bass. That is awesome. So we are back on the air, y'all. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, and my special guest for today is Bobby Nash. Welcome back, Bobby.
Oh, thank you.
So last hour we were finishing up. We were talking about pop culture and nerding out a little bit. I'm a comic book fan. Actually, before the show, we went to our local comic book store, local neighborhood comic book store, which is actually called Neighborhood Comics. And Lee and the gang over there, we were like, "Hey, how y'all doing?" So I had some good news. I shared this with you before the show, but I want to share it with the audience, everybody listening. They were doing a little fundraiser event where local artists were doing tribute covers. You know those little comic book covers that are the blanks that artists draw on and stuff like that? So I saw that they were looking for local artists. They had a couple of spots open, and whatever. And, we go there. I don't go there every week, but I go there probably, a couple times a month maybe or whatever while we're catting around before the show. Stop in. I'm looking at, some of the new comics and I'm walking around. I'm looking at the new Thor, and Bass is like, "Hey, your cover's missing off of the wall there." And I was like, oh, wow, okay, maybe they took it down or whatever. And he's like, why would they take it down? They've got all these other ones up here. And I was like, I don't know. So I asked Lee over there, and he said, yeah, that it probably sold because there was a person that was here from out of town, and they had stopped in at the comic book store or whatever, and they were looking at it, and they liked it. And it was Amazing Spider-Man #1, but it was the one where he turns into a werewolf. And so the little tribute cover that I did was like him, as a werewolf, like with the Spider-Man costume on and all. And I was really surprised. It made me feel good as an artist, because I did a sketch first before I did the cover. And, comic books, the covers are a lot smaller than the sketch that I did. And I was like, I didn't really, I didn't feel like it translated as well when I did the cover. But yeah, I was glad that it turned out, and the person liked it, and it made me feel pretty good as an artist. And I think that's one of the things, like we were talking about earlier, in the last hour, about reaching the audience.
Hmm.
And I know my art's not for everybody. I know my writing is not for everybody. Matter of fact, I had a bad review one time where the person said that it was the only story in the anthology that they just put down and stopped reading. Out of, like, I don't know, a dozen or so stories, mine was the one, and I know my stuff is not for everybody. I know that. But it is so nice to get, that feeling that somebody's like, they enjoyed it, or they enjoyed, the artwork, or they enjoyed the story, or, whatever. And, kind of tying that back in, like, with you have your original characters, like Abraham Snow is, one of your big series that you do. You have, like, with the, I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but in The Devil's Due, you created a whole new little universe for that story.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is such a neat device, because we, as adults, we kind of grow up, we have these jobs, and we have bills to pay, and we have these things, and and we kind of lose sight of play, right? And
Right.
I feel like when we're, enjoying stuff like reading, or like the pop culture stuff, it's a connection back to that play, that, and having a, being lighthearted, and having a good time, just because it's just to enjoy life. And I think
Right.
that's one of the reasons why pop culture is. And when I say pop culture, I mean, like, like how I remember as a kid, man, that there weren't, like, a ton of different nerd shirts that I could wear,
Hmm.
and there definitely weren't a bunch of action figures. I mean, like, the ones that were out were, like, the ones that they were making. Now you have, like, for example, the Marvel characters, DC characters. You have these, figures that are so accurate, and they have so much articulation, and the art has just changed so much. You have these incredible artists out there who are just, they like McFarlane's one of my favorites. And I love the reason why I love indie authors, like yourself. When we were talking last hour about the fan work, like with the Marie Curie Star Trek episode that you wrote, it goes back to that love of the story, or the love of, that universe, or whatever.
Yeah. The earliest memories I have of me being creative, not necessarily writing, but just inventing stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was my brother. I was eight and a half when my brother was born, so I was an only child for until I was,
You were the
eight
show.
and a half.
Yeah.
So I'm so playing was, and we lived in an area where I was in the backyard. It was a fenced in backyard. I was by myself. So imagination had to be my playmate,
Mm-hmm.
and the earliest things where I remember being creative and creating stories was I would watch things like after school. I'd come home while I'm having my snack. I would watch, like, they would play Star Trek, in the afternoons, and I'd watch an episode of Star Trek or Batman or whatever it was. And then when my mom would shoo me outside to go play, that's what I was in my head. So it's like, ooh, I'm going to play Star Trek. So I'm out, and I've invented my own little, communicator, and I've got a stick that looks like a phaser,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I wouldn't just go out and reenact what I just watched. I would come up with my own scenarios,
Yeah.
and that's where that's where my storytelling kind of started. And so when it came to, like, doing these writings for these fan films, there was a heavy nostalgia feeling, because oh my God, I loved Star Trek growing up. Star Trek was that was a big thing for me. There was just something about it that grabbed me.
Mm-hmm.
Another big thing was like Spider-Man. I was a big Spider-Man fan. So yeah, if the day ever comes I get to write Spider-Man, oh
Ooh,
man, you know.
you
But
know, I'll tell you, I am a huge Spider-Man fan, and I kind of I want to diverge a little bit here, going back to the neighborhood comics. Um, One of my friends locally, Terry Dremel, I've talked about him a little bit on the show here and there from time to time. Terry and Darlene are good friends of mine, and he created the Steve Range comics. So it's kind of like the Mad Magazine type stuff.
right,
And you know, he he's got this just really cool sense of humor. It's like this oddball, like off the wall type humor, and I love that kind of stuff.
hmm
I matter of fact, it's so crazy because I've got every issue of it. Even a special edition issue that he created for me for a birthday card, which was really cool. But he just put out issue number 10, and like when I was doing like the drawing and stuff last year, I did like the Inktober thing, and I did like this. I just made up this kind of character like Barry the Bionic Mercenary,
hmm
and kicking around like because you've written comics, and I've talked to you a little bit about that, and then talking with Terry, and I love when people have something that's original and that they're doing it, and it hit. You can feel the love when people are doing it versus
hmm
and there's nothing wrong with commercial art. Okay, to me, there's nothing wrong with commercial art, but I love it when you see that. Now, point in check. Okay, um, when those guys were doing the comic books and the cartoons and the toys and all that, they were being hired by Hasbro because Hasbro was like, hey, we've got this toy line. We want to reach kids. We have to market ethically and morally. We can't just say, hey, da da da, you know. But they created a cartoon and a comic book series for these. I mean, and these books and other things. Entertainment. They created this entertainment line for the kids to buy toys. Well, their parents to buy toys, right? So, like with you, being out there playing in the yard, if they had back in the day, they didn't really have the Star Trek toys, but if they had the Star Trek toys, I imagine that would have been something you probably like, asking for, for birthdays and other holidays and stuff, right?
One of my favorite Christmas memories, and I don't remember the year. It was probably 79 or 80. They put it was right after Star Trek the motion picture came out.
Yeah.
They made a plastic bridge set, and I remember one year for Christmas I got the bridge set and action figures of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy,
Wow.
and that was awesome. And so I played with those until I broke them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stuff like that, yeah, absolutely. Imagination played a big role, but yeah, when you got to the point where you had, you could still have play with toys and still be imaginative. Like, when I started getting GI Joe figures, and I wasn't getting like the whole line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nobody got the entire thing. There was like 300 million of them.
So, but I mixed and matched. So like, I had this whole. I wish I had, I wish I still remembered all the details, but I had this whole thing that I played where my two favorite action figures I owned were Destro and Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And I had this whole thing where Destro and Boba Fett were just fed up working for the Empire and Cobra, so they struck out on their own. They steal a ship, and because I had one of those Star Wars ships with the wings that folded up.
Yeah.
So they steal a ship and they go off on adventures. And so there was a lot of creativity that came out of me playing with the handful of toys that I had, and yeah, it started something in my brain that made me want to keep making up stories.
I think the same thing for me. Like when I was a kid, I remember in second grade learning how to draw. Like, and I had a friend of mine that we used to draw like with GI Joe and stuff like that. Like, remember Storm Shadow and oh gosh, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were like the two ninja brothers or whatever. And That was like the big thing, was like the ninjas was like a big thing. So we used to draw ninjas all the time, and we used to make these little paper throwing stars and all this stuff. We used to pretend like we were ninjas all the time, and that was one of the ways that I learned how to draw. I used to trace these figures, and we would trace the same figure, and then we would like do different costume designs for them and stuff, and there would be a new character, right? And I remember as a oh man, getting into reading comic books changed the way I started to draw, right? And I used to write stories and stuff in grade school too, but the Hulk issue with X Factor, where Todd McFarlane was the artist. He wasn't the cover artist, but he was the interior artist. And there was this. It was the Gray Hulk, and that was like the first comic. I think it was issue 386 and 387. I think I had 387, and then later on I got 386. But it was like a two-part issue series. And just seeing that artwork, I wanted to, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Started reading comics and got really into the X-Men comics. And it was the same time that Spider-Man and Kraven, like the Venom story, came out. Like they killed Spider-Man off, but he wasn't really dead. And then Venom came, and it's like, ooh, it's like a big blow up. And that McFarlane issue wasn't his first Marvel drawing, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, the Spider-Man one. But when McFarlane took over Spider-Man, it was like, it just exploded. It's kind of like when Jim Lee popped into the X-Men. It was like he showed up, and it's like, wow, this guy, where is this artist coming from? And those, I used to draw all the time. I'd draw all these characters and create all these characters and stuff like that. And of course, now we have access to being able to publish these things. Back then it was like, you did a sketchbook, or you wrote in a notebook, or you typed it up, and indie publishing was like literally non-existent. I had never even thought about indie publishing. Like the dream was like, man, I would love to be able to, to work with McFarlane one day, or draw, the Spider-Man book or whatever. Cause I love Spider-Man. It's like one of my favorite all-time characters, the Hulk. Oh my gosh, it's already time to say the station announcement. Everybody, you listen to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And so that creativity, Bobby, for me, it was, that was a way to enjoy things. I would create those little characters, and then we would play with the Transformers. My neighbors and I, we'd get together. We had all these little different, little missions and stuff, little things that they had to do, kind of just like the cartoon, and but the whole line of thinking here with that is like we as artists, we have to try to sell our work to people if we want to do that. Like for me, it is a goal. I would love to be financially independent with my artwork and my writing and stuff. But again, it goes back to connecting with those readers and connecting with the folks, and because there's so much out there. I mean, like that, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, but it's almost like how do I say it in a polite way? It's almost like pop culture. It works for you and it works against you. If you've got something, the market will let it rise. But if you have, like for books, for example, if you have a great story but you have a horrible cover, more than likely people aren't going to buy it. Or if you have a great cover but you have a horrible story, people might buy the book, but then they're not going to keep reading, right?
Right. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's like any type of business. I mean, it is very tough, and you have to you certainly have to put out the best work you can, and the best put the best book out you can if you're going to write. But I agree too. It's not everyone writes for the same reason. So I always tell people, it's like, because I get this question a lot about what advice would you give to up and coming writers, and it's always set goals for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you want out of writing. Because some people like you and I, we're doing it as it's a business thing. It's my career.
Oh, yeah.
So I have goals to grow that career. I know a lot of people that write just for the thrill of writing,
Yeah.
and so they write because they enjoy it, and they're not interested in making money. They're just interested in putting stories out. There's a lot of people that write just fanfic. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Well,
You know.
in that realm, it's kind of strange that you bring that up, that part, because I'm talking about the other part too. Uh, there are people that do fanfic and they just want to write for the passion of writing,
Hmm.
and that's cool. That's fine. That's what they want to do. I know some folks that they just started publishing within the last 5 years, and they're making a living off of this, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like it goes back to the product itself. I feel like you have to have a good story. You have to have all these other things. You have to have a good story. You have to have a good blurb. You have to have good distribution. Good cover. Um, but ultimately, it is, I feel like, connecting with your audience. You
Yeah.
know, building that relationship with your audience, because it's the same thing with cancel culture. You get people that have built up an audience, but then they do something that's just kind of crazy off the wall, and all of a sudden they're like, nobody wants to do anything with them at all. You know,
Right.
I mean, like Pee Wee Herman, for example. Back in the day, Pee Wee used to be like a big name, and then I don't want to bring up what he did, but basically he had a pretty bad social
Hmm.
issue, and then he was just like completely canceled. And it was years and years and years before he was really able to do any other work.
Yeah. Well, and you can do like you can put together a great book. You can do everything right and still not find an audience.
Yeah.
It's and there are a big portion, and it's terrible that sometimes it is this way, but a big part of the success or failure of a lot of creative, and not just indie, any book, any kind of creative field, a lot of it is luck and timing.
Mm-hmm. Well, like this last year, I put out a book on in January, and
Mhm.
it fell flat, and it was completely my responsibility. I mean, like the first one, the first Blood Thrasher I put out, I think I sold maybe 60 copies of it. Not an incredible number of it, but it's got a dozen or so reviews. I didn't advertise or anything like that for it. I did a couple of those Amazon giveaways, but then when I put out the second book, it was just like flat. I didn't have an email list of people. I didn't advertise it. I put it out the wrong time of the year. A lot of different things, but all of those things I've learned are just, they're not I want to say excuses, but more like learning curve
Yeah.
mistakes.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into why books succeed or fail, and
Yeah.
a lot of them are not in your control.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put out a book in February, for example, and it just doesn't sell well. However, had you have put it out in March, something else like maybe a movie came out with a similar premise or
Mm-hmm.
a similar genre that hits it big, and people are suddenly scrambling for that type of book.
Yeah, yeah. When that is a big thing that kind of like connects and kind of theme with the the pop culture stuff. It's like what's hot now and what's popular. That's
Hmm.
what's going to sell. You know.
Yeah, yeah. You should never write to trends, because by the time you finish the book, the trend might be over.
Right. Exactly.
You
If
know,
you're writing after the trend started, you're behind the curve.
right,
Right.
right. If you write vampires just because vampires are cool now, they may not be cool when you get your book finished.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing about it, was like I wrote it because I've always loved vampire stories.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's the reason to do it,
yeah.
because that's you have a passion for that. Because if you just try to write what's popular, two things could happen. You could either be behind the curve, or say you hate writing vampires, but you write this vampire novel because that's what's popular.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes popular. You now get pigeonholed as a vampire writer, and you find yourself writing vampires the rest of your life that you don't like.
You know, I like authors like Neil Gaiman who have a range of different writing that they do. I mean, like, for example, Good Omens. It was a great TV show. It was a great adaptation of the book,
Yep.
and he's written so many different things. You know, but he started off as a journalist, and then he was well known for his Sandman comics. You know, and then he started writing his other novels, and I saw somebody had posted a Tumblr, a question to him on Tumblr, and it was the guy was saying that he was a lazy writer and that he was just procrastinating, you know, for no reason really. And Neil Gaiman wrote back, and I'm assuming that this is true. I just, it was a screenshot type thing, so I can't validate this, and I don't know that it's factual, but the premise of it I thought was really interesting. So anyway, that he wrote back saying that that was good because there were other writers and authors who were willing to do the work and submit to magazines, and that by him not submitting to these magazines, it made space for other people who actually wanted to do the work and wanted to, get published. And I'm kind of leading into this question with being published and selling books and things like that, or selling stories or whatever. I know now you get a lot of solicitation where people ask you, but that wasn't always the case.
Oh, Lord, no. In my early days, I did a lot of submitting.
Yes.
I worked with, there was a long period of time because I started out with comics. I started out submitting to comics, and I worked with some local artists, and we would pitch things. And when you pitched a book, you always pitched like the first 5 pages. It was years before I ever wrote page 6 of a story.
Right.
When the first time I sold a comic, it was like, oh crap, now I got to write the whole story.
Right. Like, wait a minute. I only thought first 5 pages through.
It's like, yeah, what do I do on page 6? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But
I've already had the splash page.
And you hit upon, this is one of the things, because whenever I have one of these woe is me days, I wish my career was doing better days, I remember there was a point in my life where I would have killed to be where I am right now. Mm-hmm. And even though I'm not where I want to end up, 10, 15, 20 years ago when I was not published, and, to have the thought of having publishers come to me and go, Bobby, would you like to write something for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's because, I'm used to it because it happens, now, but I have to remind myself that there was a point in time where I would have just kicked myself to be where I am right now.
Well, and I think work begets work. Like when it's just like with a job. Writing is a job, and when you are on a job and you're learning a skill or whatever, as you build those skills up, you're able to do different kinds of work and solve different kinds of problems. And just like with me, this year, this pandemic, it has been crazy for everybody. It threw off my publishing schedule, and it did a lot of different things because, we just had to shut down events and that kind of thing. But I was able to focus on goals that I wanted with the publishing. I don't have like a bazillion pre-orders, but I have a good number of pre-orders for our anthology, and I feel like as well, it's almost like the Avengers, assembling a team of authors, for this anthology. I'm like the Nick Fury going out there and saying, "Hey, kid, here you're a writer,"
It's like I need the leader.
Yeah.
I need the promoter. I need the I need the
heavy
talker.
guns.
I need the
Yeah.
And so you start grabbing people because you start going like, ooh, this person's going to promote. Yeah, we definitely want them. This person's great doing interviews. Yeah, we definitely want them. And
Well, and I felt like the group of people that we have in the anthology are all, first of all, great writers, and then secondly, that they are all serious about their authorship.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do the mid-hour break. I'll be right back.
All right.
A financial contribution during this year's on-air membership campaign for WRUU. Because of your generosity, we're able to continue bringing you the music and talk programs that you've come to expect. And we're back on the air with our regular programming. Thanks for your financial support of Savannah's best local talk radio, as voted by readers in the most recent Connect Savannah poll, WRUU 107.5 FM. That's what we're all about. If you somehow missed the campaign, you can donate anytime at WRUU.org. Donations keep us going. All of us here at the station greatly appreciate what you, the community, does to make Community Radio 107.5 possible. Here's to another great year of radio.
This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is brought to you by listeners and the Ships of the Sea Museum. The wait is over. The Ships of the Sea Museum has reopened. Learn about the West Broad Street School, the first publicly funded school for black children in Savannah. See one of 2 surviving weather kiosks in the country. And Ships of the Sea new Tour Buddy app allows everyone to discover what makes Savannah, Savannah. More information can be found at shipsofthesea.org.
This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. This is Kinski, from the album Live at WFMU, April 22nd, 2003.
And no, it's not. This is Adam Messer, and I'm on the radio show, The Adam Messer Show, here with my special guest, Bobby Nash. We've been talking this last hour and a half or so about writing and that kind of thing. And, Bobby, question for you on, we're talking about the anthology and, assembling a crew. And then before that, we were talking about, you submitted a lot of work, and now you get solicited now. Like, matter of fact, I think we were talking not too long ago that there's some stuff where you're like, well, I don't want to turn it down, but I can't do it right now, right?
Yeah, well, one of the hardest things for me was learning to schedule myself accurately. It's still a problem I suffer with, and there was a time too when I first started getting work. When I started I did a lot of anthology work in the early days of my career. I didn't know how to say no. So I would, if someone said, we want you to do an anthology, and anthologies are great. I love anthologies. There's not a lot of money in anthologies, so as a career, you can't make a career on doing just anthologies.
No.
But the anthologies for a short time took over, and that's all I was doing. And so one of the greatest things I learned was being able to say, no, I can't do that, or my schedule's booked for 6 months. Can you wait 6 months? And if they can't, then I was like, well, I can't do it earlier than that. There have been a few instances in my life too, in my career where I've gotten offers to work on things that I was not as comfortable with, or just because of the topic, or in some cases I've had offers where it's like, we'd like you to write something for this, and it's this character, and I go, I am not the right guy to write that character.
Yeah,
that's just I don't want to be the guy that screws that up. I'm not the guy. So knowing that, learning that when to say no and when to step aside has been a big factor in helping things. I still overbook myself all the time. I know it. I do it. I know I do it, but I still do it.
Well,
so
it's good though.
Get better at that.
It is good to keep the pipeline going. It's kind of weird because let's just put it this way. There's always going to be projects that fall through, and
you also, the way the muse hits you, or however you want to say it, when you're writing for a career and you've accepted all these assignments, you have to work on things by deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
That's never what you're in the mood to work on.
No.
Like I have a deadline this week for something, and I'm almost there, and I'll get it done. But it's not that I'm not enjoying that story, but what I feel like working on today is not that, but it's something else. But I have to make myself go, no, you can't do this. You've got to do this. So sometimes that's, one of the things that gets me is like, I don't feel like working on that.
I would have that problem sometimes with writing articles for the paper, where it was just something that I had no interest in writing about at all. It was an assignment, and I'd always try to look at it from the angle of the person that was involved, and try to, get something, from that angle versus, the thing, the event or whatever. And of course this year's been like, pretty snafu-y with all the stuff. But, I'd had times where like it's Sunday, and it's due by Monday at 12, and it's Sunday night. And of course Monday I've got to work. So I have to turn mine in on Sundays to make the deadline. And it's Sunday night and I'm like, struggling to, pull out 500 words, and give the best, not just 500 words, but give the best 500 words that I can give, to represent that article.
And that's where the difference between writing as a career and writing for the fun of it comes in. When you're writing for a career, that sometimes means, nope, can't go out and hang out with you guys tonight at the movies or dinner. I've got to work, or I got to stay up and work a little later to get this finished, so I'm not going to bed for a while, or oh man, there's a TV show I want to watch on tonight, but I got to write, and so I'll record it and watch it later. And
that's the thing with the journalism, being paid to write for the articles as a freelance writer. I enjoyed doing it because it was nice, extra little pocket money. But there is a big difference between being professionally paid for writing versus doing it for myself, because there are expectations. It has to be a polished product. It can't just be, not to knock fan fiction, but it can't just be a fanfic picture or article or whatever. It has to be, a well-crafted, designed story. And writing an article is the same thing as writing a short story, is the same thing as writing a chapter or paragraph, a sentence. It doesn't matter. It's like all the same. Just whatever the subject is you're writing about, it's different. But when you're doing it for yourself and you're like, oh yeah, I want to write about this character, da la la, and you're just knocking it out, but then you have a deadline, and you've been working on it, but you haven't finished it up. That deadline could be an 800-pound gorilla in the room with you.
Oh, absolutely. And you had mentioned before, like working on licensed characters. I hear this all the time. It's like, man, if I ever got to write that, I would do that. And what you have to remember about writing licensed properties is you still have to work for the people that own that character.
You got a tightrope you have to walk.
Yeah, there are do's and don'ts. Like I said, like doing the Star Trek thing or Night Vale. I have to put those toys back in the toy box in the condition I found them.
Character has to be better off when you got it.
Yeah, you can't. You're writing a story with that character. So unless the publisher or the owner instructs you to do it, my job is not to create major life changes for those characters. Sean Taylor once told me this, and I think someone told it to him, but he's the one that told it to me. He says, the biggest thing I can tell you about writing licensed characters or writing in this world is, don't blow up Cleveland. We may need it in another story later.
Yeah.
If you make massive changes to the world, those become those big fixed points. Like if you look at Spider-Man, there's a big fixed point when Gwen Stacy dies. His life becomes when Gwen Stacy was alive and when she's not alive. That's a fixed point in his life. That's not something me as a freelancer should come in and do. That's something the company would do.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're going to be on the book for 12 months or 2 years possibly, then you can talk about that kind of stuff. But even that, I mean, talking about licensed products, look at the changes that Marvel made after Disney bought it, right? You know, you had, with the movie rights, with the comic books, for example, they pretty much, Sony had the rights to do all of the X-Men characters and in any of the movies that they were doing, right? Disney couldn't do those characters. Even with the Hulk, the reason why the Hulk was not in a standalone was because Disney was doing the Hulk stuff, but they couldn't do a standalone Hulk movie because the other company had the rights still to do a standalone Hulk movie, right?
Right.
So like
right.
all the
Universal,
Avenger, all the Avenger line, Endgame line stuff, you know, where he was in Thor Ragnarok, you know, they had to follow those certain rules. But if you look at the comic books and the tie-ins with those, now Disney has the rights to do X-Men stuff again, or they've come to some kind of agreement or something like that. Now, the X-Men, they just had like the House of X series that was huge, right? So they're coming back around. But before that, they were, you know, limiting characters and cutting off books. Fantastic Four, they did the same thing with Fantastic Four. Yep. And you know, and it's all because of that IP ownership, and it goes back to the corporation of, you know, this is a product, and even though it's entertainment, it is a product. You know, so like if I say, hey, Bobby, I want you to write my next Blood Thrasher book, you know, I don't want you coming in there and destroying the universe.
Right.
You know, I want you to come in and I want you to, you know, wrap it up for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, you know, when I worked on Night Vale, there was a Bible of do's and don'ts. Mm-hmm. When I worked on Green Hornet, there was a bigger Bible of do's and don'ts. You know, and that's so. Like when I work for a publisher, you know, I have to follow in the publisher's guidelines.
Yeah. When
you're doing licensed products, that also adds in the IP owners, you know, blueprint of what they want done. So you have to work within what they give you. So all these, you know, so I hear it all the time. Oh yeah, if I ever get to write Spider-Man, I'm doing this. And I'm like, you're not going to do that because they're not going to let you do that.
You're not going to do that. You might as well create a whole brand new character and do that yourself on your own, because you can't do that with Spidey.
Right. Yeah. And because, you know, you as a professional, you know that going in.
Yeah. But going back to the being paid versus, you know, doing it for, you know, fun, there are expectations, and I think that is what separates people from being professional. You don't have to necessarily be paid to be professional, but you have to be on your A game, you know. Like, so for example, I've done freelance journalism. I'm not a daily beat reporter. You know, I've been doing it since 2014. I'm sorry. I don't have the same level of experience as someone who's a new reporter that they do this day in and day out, because that's what they do for their job. I'm a freelancer, so like you know, you get paid for doing this job, you know, and but I still maintain my professionalism. I do the best job that I can with it. Going into the publishing side, you know, like going from being an indie author, self-publisher, to creating a small publishing house and hiring other authors, paying them, you know, for their stories, to license their story to use in the anthology. You know, there's a certain level of expectation there, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's what it goes back to, is like, you know, selling the work is important. I feel like, you know, it's really good to be able to sell your work. You know, I do. When you're trying to make a commercial product and you want to sell it, you know, but the goal cannot be like all we're going to do is focus on, you know, how can we sell this product to somebody. You have to have a product to sell first.
Mm-hmm. And even more than that, I mean, it's any creator, but I mean, you hear people talk about brand all the time.
Yeah.
You are part of your brand. So I'm not just out selling snow books.
Right.
I'm also selling Bobby the writer, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you might, because think about it this way, you might love, like, say you read one of my snow books and you love it, and you meet me and, man, I'm not a nice guy. Suddenly you don't like the book as much.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Whereas if you meet me and it's a pleasant experience, and you know, oh, he was so nice when I met him, you might be oh, I should read more.
Yeah,
So you as a creator are as much your brand as your books are.
I agree.
And part of what you do with your brand, I mean, this radio show is part of your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you do. So it's all part of. It's not just. I'm not just selling books. I'm selling this big package.
Well, and it's building, like I said, I talk about relationships building all the time. I love to build relationships with people one person at a time. And, I've done a bunch of local comic book shows and different events and things like that. And I feel like it's connecting with people, and you have to have a product to sell in order to sell anything. You can't just try to, hype it up and then do the pre-order sales and then not send the book out to the people, that paid for it on, Kickstarter or whatever. You got to send them the product. You can't just, create, and that's been a big problem with, I think indie creators, and why people get bad names is because there's been so many people who, they did like this fundraiser type stuff, and they had the hype based off of a poster or based off of an idea, but not an actual product. So,
yeah.
Bass, do you want to go ahead, Bobby? What?
I was going to say, because there's a lot that goes into it. And I mean, it's talking about the process, getting people excited about it before it comes out, talking about it when it comes out, talking about it a year after it's out. There's a lot to it.
All right, Bass is going to play a little bit more live music, and then we got about 10 minutes left on the show. So here is Sebastian Messer. Awesome, Bass. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I love when you play on the show here. So, all right, Bobby, we got about 10 minutes left. Actually, we have 8 minutes left before we have to wrap the show up. So, we've been kind of, we haven't talked about like the nuts and bolts of writing today because we've done that on other episodes, and people can tune in, to some of those other episodes or whatever. But we've been talking more about like, the pop culture and then, some of the marketing and some of the branding and stuff like that. You have done a bunch of these virtual shows, right? When you go into these different shows or whatever, obviously you hash out a lot of the same questions, I'm sure that you get the same kind of questions over and over again. What is a question maybe that you wish someone would ask you that they don't ask you?
I don't know. That's a tough one because I do a lot of interviews. So you're right. I get a lot of the same ones over and over. But occasionally you get some that it's like, ooh, I hadn't thought of that before. I don't know. I can't think of any. I'm clamoring for someone to ask because most times too, when you get someone says they want to do an interview with you, they'll say, "Is there anything you want?" You can go ahead and throw a question in. So I don't have any that I've never answered that I can think of off the top of my head. But
all right, here's one. Here's one for you. What's your favorite color?
My favorite color is green.
Green, and your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is Jaws.
Jaws. I knew that one, but I don't think the people at home knew. How about your favorite pastime? I know you and your dad do something that's pretty cool.
We just take road trips. they're fun. I enjoy doing that. But probably my favorite pastime, and I don't do it near often enough. I used to love to hike. Like go out to the state parks and hit the trails. Now I haven't done it in a while, but I used to love doing that.
Yeah, I like that too.
But my dad and I, like right now, especially when we're trying to stay away from people, we will, just to keep us from going stir crazy in the house, we do get out and we get in the car and we'll hit the road, and we don't really get out and go anywhere in particular. We just go.
Yeah.
So it's just the two of us in the car, and we can chit chat, and we go to different areas, and we see, check out the sights. Sometimes we'll go to the mountains, or just wherever, and take nice rides. And I'm always taking photos, and because there's that writer part of your brain never cuts off, and you're like, ooh, that's a great location for this to happen to snow in.
Mm-hmm.
You snap some photos, or so that's fun. We do enjoy that, the getting out and the going.
I think that's cool. I had one more question for you.
Okay.
When you're writing and you have a book and you're finished with the book, are you the kind of author who reads their own work, or are you the kind of author that doesn't like to read it after it's done?
I'm not opposed to reading it. Sometimes I do go back and look it over just to see what I screwed up on, or if I revisit the character later, I may go back and read the previous story just to get myself back in the mindset.
Yeah. Like some of those actors are like, oh, I don't want to watch myself on screen type thing. Yeah.
I don't read mine for fun.
Yeah.
Because by the time the book comes out, I've read the thing a dozen times already.
Right.
If I never read it again, I'm probably okay.
Right.
But sometimes you do that. You go back to get, to either immerse yourself back in that world, especially if you're writing characters, that you wrote before, or comics are a little different. I don't mind reading my comics. Yeah, that's because
Yeah, I like comics too.
Sometimes you forget you read it if you get into it.
Yeah.
And you forget you're reading something of yours, but.
Something else I like to do too is like I'll revisit. Like the other day, I have the Phoenix Saga trade paperback, and like sometimes I'll just revisit a couple of key pages, and it just reminds me of like the whole story.
Yeah, I like, sometimes I'll flip through. I'll grab a trade off the shelf here, and I'll flip through things, or very different things like that, or just. If I'm feeling nostalgic, I'll pull something out. But no, I don't sit and read my stuff just for fun.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate you being on the show today, Bobby. Where can people check out your information?
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I'm at bobbynash.com. That's my main website. I do have a website for Ben Books, which is my publishing company. It's ben-books.com.
Mm-hmm.
And my Abraham Snow series has its own website now, since I've got it's like a nice ongoing series, and that's abrahamsnow.com.
Abrahamsnow.com. Oh, you got a dedicated URL for that. That's great.
I do, yeah. And I'm all over social media. I'm author Bobby Nash on Facebook. I'm at Bobby Nash on Twitter, and I'm Bobby Nash Writes on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Bobby. I really appreciate it. And everybody, if you're just now tuning in, the podcast will be available later on the AdamMessershow.com, so you can catch it later on if you missed the first or any parts of the show. So, all right, Bobby, thanks a lot, man.
Oh man, this was fun. I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody.